everybody, and welcome to the cabin. My name's Elizabeth, and I run the blog at thewhistlingroosterhomestead.com. And I am posted up in my attic at my desk, which is kind of my quiet space. It is really cold up here, so I've got a hot cup of tea, and I am wrapped in my blankie, and I wanted to show you guys my seed haul for this year, and also introduce you to my organizing system, which is something that has really caught on within the last couple years, but it is very effective and works for me, so I wanted to share it with you, as well as share some of the varieties that I'm going to be growing this year in my almost 4,000 square foot growing space, and just have a little visit with you today. So grab a hot drink if you're in the middle of winter like I am. It is a welcome reprieve from the cold outside, and we will talk seeds. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into how I organize my seeds and what this is and where you can get it and where you can get a good deal on it. So this is a 4x6 photo organizer. I have an idea of what I want to do next year, but I'm really going to have to ponder on it, because the way that I have my seeds ordered right now, I have done them alphabetically by what type of crop they are. And I have a little bit of variance here from some other home gardeners. Number one, because my space is so large. I have a massive amount of seeds for that reason, as well as I do try to make some of my investment back into my garden by selling plant starts, and this is something that's really easy to do and there's a really high demand for, so if you're interested in it, it's probably something that you could capitalize on at least a little bit, if not just to sell your extras, because a lot of time, or give away your extras. I give away a lot of plant starts to friends and family as well. I've shared plant starts with neighbors, I've traded plants with people locally, so it's just a really fun thing to do when you have the ability to start seeds at home, is to use them to share and connect with your community. And I do make a little bit of my money back by selling plant starts, which is part of the reason why I have such a vast amount of seeds. My collection is not nearly as large as some others I've seen. My collection may be bigger than yours. We're not going to talk about size today. We're just going to talk about how I organize it. And obviously, this would be too much for some people. Like, I have 3 different containers for tomatoes, because I do grow a lot of tomatoes. I start a lot of tomatoes and I sell a lot of tomatoes. And I'm really going to try and focus on paste tomatoes this year in my garden. So those were some of the purchases that I made this year. But there are a lot of different types of cherry tomatoes that can be grown and that people like to buy. So I'll get to that. I'll go through each variety and I'll kind of put away what I've acquired this year. And talk to you about some of my favorite varieties that I have here in my seed collection. But for me, this organizing system has worked really well for me, because if I have a day that I'm going to go out and I know that it's time for me to plant carrots, I will just come in, I will just grab my carrot box from my seed container and I will take this outside and I will go direct sow out in the garden. Now, when it comes to things that I'm starting indoors, like peppers, a lot of times, because I start all my peppers at once and I don't do, usually you start like peppers and tomatoes around the same time. I won't do them all in one day, obviously, because I have a lot of tomato seeds starting that I'm dealing with. So I'll grab my pepper box, I'll do my indoor seed starting for peppers for that week, and then I will come back and I will do my tomatoes on another day. This might be really different than somebody else. Like one of my favorite content creators on YouTube and Instagram is Brie Ellis, and she organizes hers by week. So when you have the first or second or third week of your seed starting, she puts everything that goes per the corresponding week into a little box. I don't know that I could do that, because while I'm starting these things not all on the same day, I do start them at around the same time, and there's no way that all of these seeds would fit in one of these boxes. So I've considered doing that, especially as I figure out what varieties are my favorites. I'm going to be narrowing down the vastness of my seed collection to which varieties are my absolute go-to heavy producing regular selections and only grow a couple of types of each vegetable in the garden. So that'll be somewhere in the future. Right now, I really, really love experimenting with seed starting, so I have an obnoxious collection of seeds, and this isn't even all of them. I also have, aside from this box, which I'll talk about in a second, I have a couple of smaller boxes that I bought online, which, I'll look at this one because this one's really full, which contain I have herbs and flowers in here, and I think I am going to change this box of my herbs and flowers to planting by week, because I was dividing up all of my sections by color because I was planting in groups of color. Like I had all my cool color flowers together. I had all of my whites and my yellows planted together. And then I have a box of sunflowers. I think I am going to sort these by planting date. I'll have to see how that goes after seed starting this year. But I like to keep my flowers and herbs separate because they're not something that I do a lot of indoor starting. These are a lot of direct sow. So this box doesn't necessarily need to be contained in my main box, which is most of my indoor starting seeds. And then these are sized a little bit differently too. I think these are actually 5x7, and I do like this size better because it fits the larger packets in here. So I was actually thinking about going to some of these, having like 3 or 4 of these larger boxes instead of that briefcase size one. I'm not sure yet, because I've been using that briefcase size one for probably 3 years now, and I do really like it. But I think that this might fit my needs a little bit better. And one of the reasons is because it does fit like the Baker Creek packets and these oversized packets from Botanical Interest, but they also fit regular seed packets double wide. So if you're looking at this box here, when you're stacking seed packets in here, I have my large seed packets underneath, and then standard size seed packets fit double wide in here, and I really kind of like that because it's not as bulky. So I've got to make a decision about how I'm going to do that next year. But for now, I have herbs and flowers separated. They're done alphabetically. All of my seeds are organized alphabetically. And then in this smaller container, I have beans and peas. And I don't know if the beans and peas box is ever going to go away because they are such a staple crop. You have to keep a lot of bean and pea seeds around if you're going to grow any decent amount of legumes. And as well as they're really large seeds, so they take up a lot of room. And these larger boxes, I don't even have that many bean seeds in here. When you're talking about like how many seeds you plant per square foot, this is actually not going to go very far. And the same thing goes for corn. Corn seeds are kind of hard to store because they are really bulky, just like beans and peas. And I might end up, after I narrow down what my bean and pea selections are going to be for my annual garden, I might end up sticking corn in here. Because this is like my oversized seed box. Got a lot of large seeds in there. So I'm going to go back to this other container because this is going to serve the average home gardener's purposes probably the best, I would say. And I got this container online, but I found a really good deal on it. I think it was like a Black Friday, or I had some kind of coupon code or something for this container, and I ended up getting this container for, I think, $12.99. Now, if you buy these locally, I know that you can get these at Michael's. I'm not sure about Joann's, but you can get these at Michael's Arts and Crafts locally in their scrapbooking section, where all their like scrapbooking storage and stuff is located at. These are quite expensive, and I'm not sure exactly why. But the good thing about Michael's is that you can sign up and get coupons, or sometimes they run ads. They regularly put out 40% off coupons that you can use on one of these to get a much better deal on it. I think these run upwards of like $35 full price, which is a ridiculous amount of money to pay for a storage container. but you can maximize your savings by going and getting coupons on these at the right time. They even will put out coupons when this might be on sale. They have coupons that work on sale price items too. So just keep an eye out for that and make your investment at the right time so that you can get a better deal on one of these. I got one of these from my mom. She really likes it and she uses it as well for all of her annual seeds. Her garden's quite a bit smaller than mine, but you know what's funny is she organizes hers differently too. Hers are even organized different than mine. And it's a very personal thing how you divide up and separate and organize and order your seeds. It's very personal. The only advice I can give you is to group them in a logical order that makes sense to your planting calendar. So like for me, like I said, I start a lot of seeds indoors. I start a large amount of seeds at one time, so it makes the most sense to me to group these by category. It might make the most sense to you to group them by date, especially if you're doing a lot of outdoor sowing. You could group them by date. So just organize them the way that makes the most sense to you. I do really like using my label maker for these because it just looks super nice, but that's, you know, that's an upgrade. So now that we've talked about how I organize my seeds, I want to go through the acquisitions that I've made this year for seeds, which, by the way, the only seeds that I actually needed were onion seeds because onion seeds don't keep for very long. Their viability gets pretty low after they're stored in regular conditions for more than a year. So I do order onion seeds every year, and I'm talking bulbing annual onions. I do grow from seed every year, so that was one of the orders that I had to make. Everything else was totally either like just gratification or impulse buy. And I'll go ahead and talk about some of my favorite seed companies while I'm going through these, Botanical Interest being one of them. I know that they're getting really popular, not only because they're more widely available in like hardware stores and stuff like that, but also because Kevin at Epic Gardening just acquired this company, which is amazing. I'm just like blown away by that because I've been watching him for a really long time and he was just such like, he's a potato bro. And if you watch Kevin, you'll understand that reference. But he's like the OG potato bro. And he just bought Botanical Interest. It's just crazy. Botanical Interest is one of my favorite companies. Let's just look at some of these seeds that I totally impulse bought at the hardware store when I was in town getting seed starting mix. The other day, I did go and get a bulk seed packet of bush beans because I want to grow a lot of bush beans in my son's garden. He is a green bean monster. So I want to grow a lot of green beans in his raised bed as well as doing some succession planting. So I want to have a lot of these on hand. Not that I needed any more bean seeds, but this is a particular type that I'm really familiar with. I'm going to use these in my son's garden bed. And then a lot of times when I go seed shopping, I will buy in pairs because I will either grow these on and sell them, like the lavender, maybe the delphinium. Sunflowers you don't typically start indoors, but a lot of these, this goes with lavender, a lot of these I will start indoors and sell to customers. So that happens quite a bit. So a lot of, like I got 3 of those lavender packets. I'm doing a lavender experiment right now. I have some videos about that on my Instagram, but I'm doing a lavender experiment right now. Those are going to be indoor started. I found some creeping thyme seeds that I'm really interested in trying some of those for a ground cover. I'm really struggling with what I'm going to do as a ground cover in my garden because that's such a pretty mix. Because my area that I'm in, we're in a mixed forest. It's some deciduous, mostly coniferous. We have horrible problems with the carpenter ants, and I don't know if they're fire ants. They're some kind of red ant. I don't think they're fire ants, but they have these mandibles on them that just will bite the crap out of you. And they've bitten me. They've bitten my son. I don't know if they've bitten my husband, but I'm sure that they probably have. And I'm not doing bark on my garden paths. So I actually put bark in the bottom of my greenhouse. And even inside my greenhouse, I dealt with horrible ant problems because of the bark, because the carpenter ants eat the wood. So I'm just not messing with bark. I want to try and do some kind of living ground cover and like do some stepping stones kind of thing. So I'm going to try and sort that out this year if I can find a really good deal on flagstone, or if I can pick some more rocks and do some stone paths. It would be so amazing if I could start some creeping thyme or maybe some pennyroyal mint. I'm a little bit concerned about the pennyroyal mint because my son does like to really pick and eat mint, and pennyroyal is not edible. So this thyme, although he doesn't really like pick and eat thyme, this wouldn't be harmful to anybody if they ate it. So I'm thinking about doing the creeping thyme. I'm gonna have to think on that, and I'll start these indoors and I'll see how they do. And that was another experiment that I'm working on. And one of the reasons why I have gotten quite a few packets of lavender is because I'm experimenting with cold stratification, both moist and dry cold stratification. And I'm also just straight planting out my lavender broadcast sown in 4x4 grow trays. And I'm hoping to get good results, but just in case I don't, I wanted to get some more seeds and see if I could do a little bit more experimentation, see exactly what is going to get me the best germination, because I love lavender. I want lavender everywhere. And the plants can end up being kind of expensive. So that's going to go with herbs, my lavender and my thyme. And the other reason why I buy seed packets, sometimes in multiples, is because I'll share them with my mom. Gardening is something that my mom and I talk about a lot. It's a shared hobby that we both really enjoy, and my mom is my best friend, so it gives me something else to talk to her about, and we just like eat it up all day long. So we share a lot of stuff in gardening. I did get her one of these, so that's gonna go to my mom. I love this African sunset. This is climbing black-eyed Susan, or sometimes they call it a black-eyed Susan vine. And I love these colors. I'm more of like a peachy or like a really pastel type colors. I'm not so much for like the really garish pink or super bright red in my personal spaces. Now, I did really like this Morning Glory mix. And Morning Glories are something that one of those is for my mom. Morning Glories are something I'm going to have to experiment with starting with indoors, because I did Morning Glories last year and they only bloomed right at the end of the season. I don't think they had long enough to grow. So I'm going to try starting those indoors this year. They're advised to start indoors, although I did direct sow them really, really early in the season. They didn't produce that well. So I'll usually I organize them in my flower bin by mixes. So like Snapdragon mix, straw flower mix. This will go in the warm colors box. This will go in the mix. This is a semi-succulent plant, Portulaca. Portulaca. I don't know how to say that. I've seen these before, like in landscaping installations, and I read online that they're deer resistant and they do really well in the heat. So I was thinking about planting those in front of our house, which gets a lot of really direct, harsh sunlight and tends to be kind of dry. And this says it thrives in poor soil conditions, that's exactly what we have. Our soil is really, really terrible. I got some loofahs. I've tried to grow loofahs before. I had a horrible time germinating them last time I did it, so I am definitely going to try harder to do the loofahs this year. I got a couple of sunflowers that I don't have, and I do tend to start flowers and tuck them in places with my annuals, because I like to do kind of a potager type style kitchen garden. Even though I'm mainly growing my garden for food, I do like to mix flowers in there. And if they're cut flowers, then it's fantastic. And I saw these and I was like, OMG, I need that. I don't stick to heirlooms with my flowers as much as I do with vegetables. I am really, really picky about only doing heirloom vegetables because I want to save my seeds. But flowers, I'm not so picky about. And this one's a hybrid. I'm really excited to try that because I have some hollyhock seeds that I've picked up. And I want to try and grow some really tall branching sunflowers and then do a row of hollyhocks in front of them. I think it could potentially look really, really cool. So I like the color of these to go with the hollyhock seeds that I got. And then I really like borage. I have tried to feed this to my son and my husband and they really don't like it because the flowers are really hairy, but they taste exactly like cucumber and they're super cute. So the pollinators also really like it. So I've grown borage before. That's one that I have fun with. I technically put that in the herbs. And then just some cosmos. I think these are super cute. These ones I'll probably start and sell because orange is really popular, but these are more my speed. You can kind of see that I've got a theme going on here. A little bit more pastel, so I will probably sell the orange ones, do the pink ones in my own garden, and then delphinium is one that I had really good luck starting from seed last year. I would like to do quite a few of them, so these are both mix. So I'm going to put them with my mixed flowers. And then echinacea, which apparently I planted out all my echinacea seeds last year, so I want to get these established in a kind of like a xeriscape thing that I'm doing in front of my garden with a lot of rocks and some native flowers. So I think I'm probably going to do this out in front of my garden, and that's going to be a warm color. So I'm going to go ahead and put those away just to get them out of the way. So in with my herbs, I will put these. And I love being able to just stack these just like this. It's so nice to have the double wide seed boxes. Herbs. I have herb seeds in there that I've also gathered myself. In that box, when you open it up, you get the nicest scent of basil from all the basil seeds that I've saved and stuck in there. My mixed box is like really sad. It's got a clip broken. And I don't know if these are all gonna fit. We'll give it a shot. All right. And then sunflowers. I love these white ones. I got these white sunflower seeds at the end of last year because I want to grow some of these white sunflowers in my son's garden. And then when you cut them, you're supposed to be able to put them in a vase of colored water and the sunflower will take up the color into the petals, just like I used to do carnations in elementary school. So I want to try that as a fun experiment for my son to do. My almost 3-year-old son loves anything to do with gardening. And it makes my little mommy heart so happy because he really likes to be outside. And he's done some seed starting with me already this year. And I'm pretty excited to give him his own garden space to play in. I'm going to grow all of his favorite little snacks and he can do some experiments on his own. Okay. Now, those were all just department store seeds that I had picked up. I don't favor any of those brands one over the other. I do try to look for heirlooms when I'm shopping for vegetable seeds. And now we're going to get into some of my more like regular, this had some random stuff in here too, but this is more of like my regular online orders that I do every year. And this one in particular, this actual envelope was from Seed Savers Exchange. So I will group those together. Oh my gosh, I was looking for this for so long. I was trying to find this Amish pie pumpkin because I am all about pumpkin pie. I am 100% a pumpkin pie girl. And I was looking for these for so long, and then I actually found them at, I think I did get these at North 40, which is a hardware feed type store in our area. I was so happy to find these. You will see me growing the Amish pie pumpkin this year. I'm really excited about that. So this was an order that I made from a catalog. It's called Seeds and Such, and their little slogan is like, seeds and shipping shouldn't cost so much, except that they weren't that cheap. You do get a packet discount if you buy, I think, like 5 or more, you start getting a discount, and it goes further and further. Like, I think you get the best discount if you buy more than 20 packets, but I didn't need that many seeds, and they didn't have that many heirlooms. So I got 2 free seed packets, and the one that I was really going for, which one of these is for my mom, was the, I don't know exactly how you say that, copia tomato. It's a really, really neat variegated tomato, and I always like get a little bit disappointed when seed packets don't have pictures on them. That's probably really like shallow of me to say, but it makes me sad. I want to see what it is on the packet, so I can go, ooh, I'm gonna eat that someday. So I got the copia tomato, or copia, whatever, and then some peach melba nasturtiums. I've seen these around this year. They're kind of a new nasturtium variety. They're super, super cute. I love nasturtium. Also tried to feed those to my son. He did not like it, which is surprising because he does like spicy food. They taste like radishes. And then they were running a special where they were giving out free seed packets, and one of them is the chocolate pear tomato, and then the fire and ice pepper. So I am going to try growing those this year. So tomato, pepper, tomato. Oh, flower. Oops. Okay. And then this was the main order that I made with Seed Savers Exchange. And the reason why I went to Seed Savers Exchange was because I was having a really hard time settling on what variety of heirloom corn I was going to grow. And I wanted to do heirloom corn because it's just a thing that I'm doing. I'm doing heirlooms so I can save my seeds and I can be self-sufficient in my garden someday. I probably won't ever not buy seeds just because that's what I do. I buy seeds and I know things. So I probably won't ever not buy seeds, but I do want to get to a point where I can grow as many seeds as I need to plant my vegetable garden for the next year. And corn is one of those things that does okay here. I've actually grown corn before. I only got like maybe 5-inch ears on it, but I did grow corn my first year that we were here. And this is called a Golden Bantam, and it's a staple heirloom variety that I'm going to try doing in my corn patch this year, which is going to be about 30 feet by 30 feet. I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully I can get some good fresh eating sweet corn and also can some corn for winter. Oh no! I forgot to do some of these onion seeds. I totally forgot there were onions in here. Well, it's a good thing I'm still within my window. Ruby red onions, these are supposed to be exceptionally long keeping. I'm going to set those aside because I'm actually going to put those in with my onions that I've just recently started in soil. I start my onion seeds indoors, and I've recorded a little video on that, and hopefully I'll be putting it out soon. It was really cute because my son came up, and onion seeds are really easy for kids to do because they're just broadcast sown. So I've got my onion video coming out, but I need to start those really soon. This variegated tomato, which is another little hobby of mine, I think that this is probably something like the Splash of Cream series. They just call it a variegated tomato, and it is a tomato that grows on a variegated plant, and I'm really obsessed with the variegated tomatoes, and it's something that I would like to try to save the seeds from and be able to grow them myself. I also want to see how good this tomato is compared to some of the other ones, because the variegated tomatoes are really pretty, but the tomatoes actually aren't that tasty. So that'll be an interesting experiment. I did get some lettuces to fill out my box. This one was a really interesting looking. It's called Strella Green. And the all cream lettuce also was from the collection, which is supposed to be like really sought after and unique varieties. I did get some kale. This is a purple kale that I've never grown before. I love vegetables that are oddly colored. So I'm really excited about this super, super purple kale. Those are going to go with greens. This Hungarian heart tomato I got specifically for the purpose of comparing to a seed variety that my husband's uncle shared with me. He actually didn't share the seeds with me. He gave me a tomato, and I ate the entire thing because it was so good. And he called it a Romanian bowling ball, but from the research that I've done about that specific variety, which he said was handed down to a gardener friend of his and then shared with him, I think that it's probably related to this Hungarian heart. And I want to compare the fruit when I plant those seeds that I save from that tomato versus these Hungarian heart tomato, which sounds and looks really similar. I want to compare the characteristics of the fruit and see if it's around the same thing. That is purely a personal experiment that I'm going to be doing. This is called a Suyo long cucumber, and it's a really traditional like slicing cucumber. It's for fresh eating. I do like to eat fresh cucumber in the garden, but they're super, super long. So this is great for doing like one of my favorite things ever, which is refrigerator pickles. We just call them cucumbers and vinegar, because literally you peel them, you slice them, you throw them in a bowl with like, you can do onions and tomatoes, and I've even put radishes in, and I just throw them in a bowl and I pour vinegar over it and I eat it with like lemon pepper. It's so good. So that's my trailer trash version of refrigerator pickles, and that's what those are going to be for. Brussels sprouts, I've heard can be difficult to grow. I don't have a lot of problems with cabbage moths or anything like that in my area, so I'm hoping to be able to grow on some really fabulous Brussels sprouts. And I did need seeds because I started and sold the last of mine last year. The Ukrainian purple tomato, I really like the flavor of dark tomatoes like purple or black tomatoes. Black cherry is one of the last varieties that I'm waiting on. It's one of my absolute, I think it's probably my favorite snacking tomato, the black cherry. And I'm waiting on that to arrive. That's my last seed order, was I think the black cherry, and then another paste tomato that I wanted to add to my collection. I've also been experimenting with growing like Ukrainian or Russian type varieties because their climate is more similar to ours than like the tomatoes that are grown in the southern United States. So I have found that they're doing a little bit better, which is really interesting. I live in a climate that still gets very cool at night during the summers. Like we'll drop down into the 40s and 50s, no problem, at night during the summers when it's 80 or 90 degrees during the day. So certain types of tomatoes don't do very well if they need a lot of hot weather. So these Russian and Ukrainian type tomatoes have done a little bit better, and I think that's really interesting. So, and this silvery fir tree, which is a tomato that I really liked growing last year, it was really good. It's just your typical, like, salad type slicer, and it has really pretty foliage. Last year I got this from MIGardener. He was the one that introduced me to that variety. So, oh, speaking of which, my boy, Luke at MIGardener, has a family-owned and operated seed company that I absolutely love to support. If I was to tell you that I literally almost died when I saw this tomato, it would absolutely be true. I am so stinking beside myself to grow this. It's beautiful. I looked at some of the pictures. It says it's an incredibly stunning 1980s heirloom. It's relatively new to the scene, to the heirloom scene. I am dying. I love variegated vegetables. I have grown the striped Roma and I did like it. My husband, this is pretty much the only tomato that he'll eat, which is really sad. He's like a Roma type guy. Purple Bumblebee. I love the Bumblebee series. They're really good heirloom cherry tomatoes. I got this baby Roma to literally try and convince my husband to eat cherry tomatoes because he's really weird about the texture and like the mouthfeel of cherry tomatoes. So I got him some of those Romas just to try. Christmas lima bean. I would like to do some lima beans to grow for a soup mix. Oh my god, more onions. Bunching onions. I love bunching onions. These red bunching onions I'm super intrigued by, so I've got to start those here pretty soon. And I bought these for my uncle. I will not be keeping any of these. I'll tell you that for free, because these are like, oh, million Scoville. Yeah, I'm not keeping this in my house. I don't do spicy food. I don't want it around my kid. But I will be growing these on. I'll probably sell some, and then I'll give some to my uncle because he loves hot peppers, and he's a closet gardener too. So I'll put those with peppers. I got some cat grass for my little kittens. I'm actually reconsidering this purchase because they stepped all over my lavender, my newly germinated infant tiny lavender seeds. They stepped all over them last night. So I'm kind of sad that I bought that for them. Again, with the differently colored vegetables, this is a beautiful little pea. I was so excited when I saw that. I'll put that with beans and peas. Rattlesnake bean, always a good one. I've grown that before. I really liked it. And then I've got some really pretty purple type flowers. This is a bachelor button and this is a poppy. I could not believe the feathered leaves on that poppy. They're amazing. And some red veined sorrel, which I've actually never grown sorrel before. I'm always going for uniquely colored stuff, but this, I've heard really good things about sorrel and I wanted to try growing that on. So I will put that with greens. And we're moving on to the next order, which is Baker Creek. I do make a small order from Baker Creek every year. They are not my go-to seed source, number one, because they're a little bit expensive for my taste. And I'm always kind of taken aback by the lack of growing information that is listed on their website or on their seed packets. Like, it gives you general growing instructions, but it doesn't give you a lot of information that's pertinent to the actual variety. Unlike some of these other seed packets, like one of my favorite sources for growing information is Botanical Interests. They put a ton of growing information on all of their varieties, and they also list growing information inside of this packet is covered with helpful information about these varieties that are included in there. So that's one of my things about Baker Creek. If you're not a really experienced gardener, you might run into some problems with some of their varieties because they don't give a lot of specific information, especially because they carry a lot of really rare varieties. They don't talk about like, oh, this seed needs to be scarified or you're not going to get good germination, as opposed to most of the time you don't have to do that, or you need to soak these before you plant them or whatever. Or giving specific instructions like, this pepper plant needs to be pinched. There's a lot of information like that on some of these websites. Baker Creek is not one of them. They just offer beautiful pictures and really rare varieties, and they're like, here you go. You know what to do with it. This was a free variety I got from them that looks really interesting. It's called a wasabi radish. It has a flavor that's a lot like wasabi, really spicy, radishy type flavor. I'll go with my root vegetables. This hollyhock I'm super excited about, although it says that it can bloom on the first year. I'm gonna have to really work hard to get my hollyhocks to bloom the first year. I'm not sure how successful I'm gonna be with that, so we'll see how that goes. And then, I had to get some more Rudbeckia because I didn't have a lot. Same thing with some of these flowers that I got from them. Snapdragon is really fun to start from seed. I had really good luck with stock last year, so I'm going to try and grow some more on this year. Pansies and violas, I absolutely failed at starting from seed last year, so I'm going to try a little bit harder to get some of these grown this year. So we'll see if I can pull that off. And then another runner bean that I didn't need, but I like to get varieties that are uniquely colored, especially when you're talking beans and peas. They can be super hard to find on the plant. Like, you'll go out and you pick your peas and you think that you got all of them, and then you'll come back an hour later and you'll find like 6 that you missed because they just blend in so well with the foliage. So I really like getting stuff that's uniquely colored because it's easier to see when you pick it a lot too. Like stuff that comes on really fast, like beans and peas and okra. It's nice to be able to see it if it's a contrast from the foliage. So those were my acquisitions for this year, and those are the varieties that I'm really looking forward to growing. Now, actually, as I put these away, I'm gonna talk about some of my like tried and true, like which ones have done really well for me. And keep in mind, I'm growing in a really cold climate. It doesn't normally get above like the mid 90s here during the summer. So some of the varieties that have done really well for me or that I liked a lot might not be the same kind of varieties that do really well for you, or you might not like them very much, but this is just what I've done and what works for me. So these are my brassicas, and I need to put Brussels sprouts in here. There's a lot of stuff in here I haven't grown because I've never been able to do a really effective late season sowing for stuff like cabbage and kohlrabi and sprouting broccoli. I have grown some purple sprouting broccoli and I really liked it. I couldn't tell you what variety it was because I was about 4 years ago. I have grown kale. I do like baby kale. I don't like really super overgrown kale. But yeah, so I don't have a lot to say about brassicas because I never get to do a fall planting, and that's when they're going to do the best here, is in the fall when you're getting cooling temperatures. So put those away. As far as carrots, I have grown on some of the Scarlet Nantes carrots, and I've also grown Romeos. And those are the ones that I've had really good luck with. Romeos do a little bit better in really poor soil, which is 100% what we have here. Here's some of my little Romeos. Sometimes I'll call them a Parisian market carrot. They're all like the same thing. They're just the little tennis ball carrots. And they don't usually get that big. You don't usually want them to get that big, but they're like, they can be the size of like, you know, a golf ball when you pick them. So the Parisian market or the Romeo carrots have been one of my favorites. And cucumbers, I have a little packet of cucumbers that I got from my husband's uncle that I saved to grow on this year. That one was pretty good. And I have my studio long cucumbers going to go in here. One of the most productive cucumbers that I really, really liked, both for fresh eating and pickling, was called picklebush. And I think oh, and obviously lemon cucumber, like that's a must. If you are a home gardener, you must grow lemon cucumbers. They're so good. These were a total dud. I tried to start these from seed and they did not germinate, which was bizarre. Here's the picklebush. And the original ones I got were not from Burpee. They were from SeedsNow, which I'm actually an ambassador for SeedsNow, and I'll leave my link down in the comments. But they're a really fun company. If you want to get like a little small quantity of seeds, you can pay, you know, just a few dollars and you'll get 10 seeds of something, which is all you need to figure out whether or not you like a new variety. So I am a huge proponent of SeedsNow. I really like them. And I'll leave that below. And they were the first ones that I ordered the picklebush from. Alright, my little greens container is stuffed pretty full in there because I do have quite the collection of lettuces. I've mostly grown loose leaf lettuce up to this point. And I couldn't tell you what varieties exactly because I usually get a mix. I'll get like a salad bowl mix, or you know what? I do want to take out my melon container and talk about my little blacktail melon because it's so close to my heart. There it is. That's the only watermelon so far. I didn't grow melons last year. This is the only melon so far that I've ever been able to get to maturity here in my short growing season. We only have anywhere from 90 to like 110 days depending on the year. Like last year we had it was like 120 days last year, which is crazy. We got an extra month of frost-free weather. But you can't depend on that. Usually our growing season is no more than 100 days normally. And this Blacktail Mountain watermelon, which is actually the mountain that I live on here on the homestead, was developed by a gentleman named Glenn Drowns, and he owns and operates the Sandhill Preservation Center. And this was actually developed in my neighborhood and is an established heirloom that's available widely on the market. But I'm like, it's so cute that I get to grow this watermelon. It's an early maturing, cold weather friendly type watermelon that I get to grow here in my neighborhood where it was developed. I'm so obsessed with the idea of that. So this is a watermelon that I grow every year, and that's the one that I wanted to spotlight. It's especially good for colder climates because watermelons also like to be warm at night, which is hard to get here. And There are a couple of peppers that I have grown on that have done really well. One of them was the Tangerine Dream. I didn't have good luck with bell peppers, so my advice to anyone who's gardening in a northern climate is to go with a pepper that is like an early maturing or is like a small snacking pepper as opposed to a giant bell pepper, because they'll produce a lot better. And I have grown on hot peppers. I've never had them set fruit, I think because they need to be in a more controlled environment or a hotter environment. So I grow hot peppers and I sell them. I don't necessarily grow them myself because my greenhouse is not finished. Probably the only radish that I've grown that I was really, really like excited about. They're a little bit longer and they're white on the tip. French breakfast. The French breakfast radish I was really happy with. They were really cute and they were super good. They were a little bit sweeter and crunchier and not so hot as radishes can sometimes be. So I have not had good luck growing root vegetables because I also had pocket gophers that eat absolutely everything that grows under the ground, which was wild to have to deal with last year. Now all of my raised beds are lined with 1/4 inch hardware cloth, so they won't be able to get in my raised beds, little bastards. Alright, so spaghetti squash is always a favorite of mine. I think that people technically put it into like a summer squash category, but because it's a long storing squash, I put it in my winter squash box. Super excited about that pie pumpkin. Spaghetti squash is probably my favorite winter squash that I've grown, other than acorn. I've gotten some small acorns and they were really good. We did have a really terrible experience with a carnival acorn squash that we got from Renee's Seeds, which I need to research whether or not squash is a first generation cross, because it's possible that it cross-pollinated when the seed was produced, or it's possible that it cross-pollinated in my mom's garden, where literally she had this carnival acorn squash, this beautiful carnival acorn squash, was as hard as a cannonball. We could not cut into it, and it was more like a gourd. I think it cross-pollinated with a gourd. But she's in an area where it would be basically impossible for it to cross-pollinate because she's like a 1/4 mile from the next avid vegetable gardener. So I don't know how that happened, but had a terrible experience with the carnival acorn squash. That doesn't mean that that's always going to happen. There is one experiment that I want to try doing this year. I want to try and cross-pollinate 2 different striped tomatoes. I want to do a pink jazz and a pork chop and see if I can get some kind of like blushy tomato out of it. That's going to be my first cross-pollinating experiment. I have an ebook actually where I first heard about Glenn Drown's, which is called Breeding Your Own Vegetable Varieties, and I'll link that below. It's a really fun, I call it like a toilet book. It's one of those things that you read when you're either in the bathtub or sitting on the potty. And that's it. That's it for that conversation. So I'm really excited. I am doing a week-by-week series, which hopefully will be really useful to you guys next year, because if you're in a growing zone that's any warmer than mine, it's going to be a little late for me to be posting these updates, but I'm doing a week-by-week gardening update, what you need to be starting indoors, what you need to be direct sowing, and what chores you might want to catch up on however many weeks before your last frost date, and then after your last frost date, and before your first frost date. So talk more about that in a later video, but for now I'm going to go finish my tea, and I am going to dream about everything that I'm going to grow in my garden this year, and I hope you guys do too. Thanks for hanging out with me.